pulls for something and snaps their neck back. It makes me scared. So they're not the worst out of all the other tools you can buy, that's for sure. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I guess for mine, it's more like a double leash system where like you have like a harness, like that's like your additional tool for like a heavy dog that's pulling, and just like you're using the harness first. We're obviously trying to train like for redirecting with treats and trying to get that focus back to us, but if we're needing like that extra assistance, we're like, okay, we're trying to get all the way around a little bit more.
I would use it in that context where I'm working towards getting rid of it. Yeah, it's not something I'd want to keep on, for sure. Yeah. But then there's some cases too where, depending on the client and depending on the home, and where sometimes they've just gone too fast and just didn't build that skill, so we didn't really need the Halti. It's very contextual. Yeah, but if you are using one, like we can talk more about that later too, about how to try to kind of get out of it as well. Muzzles. How many of us are using a muzzle right now for our dogs? No. So these are a no-no, these fabric ones. They keep your dog's face closed. You can't see their lip licks, you can't see their yawns. Consider an anxious person with duct tape on their face. Like how does it help your anxiety? That will make it worse. So there are some vets that will use this in an emergency. So emergency situation only, I suppose, if you had to. This is the most common one that you can buy, everywhere. And this is the Baskerville muzzle. Not a fan of this one either because I find that they fit really weird. Not only do you have this silly strap that goes over the head, which I don't know, I don't want to wear that on my head. But the way it's scooped, I know this is a fake tongue, but see that scoop? I was working with a very human reactive Rottweiler, purebred adult who did not like me from afar, and that dog, she had it on, clipped it on, she took her paw and went flip and flipped it right over her face and came at me. I don't like those anymore. This big scoop, I don't know, it was awkward. This one is the one that my Joe used to wear. This is actually a Morco Italian basket muzzle, it's called, and it's I ordered them online. They're like $30, and they're super crazy light, and they fit very differently. So you'll see there's no scoop at the bottom, no crazy strap over the head. I am learning that there's a couple new muzzle companies now, I'm not sure the names, I have to go do a little searching, that are fitting very similar to this. I actually had a lady recently, we were talking about muzzles, she's like, oh, you mean this one? And she went and grabbed one, she bought it, PetSmart. It looked almost identical to this. So that was exciting. So if you are using a muzzle, and if the Baskerville is maybe uncomfortable or you're not a fan, try to find something like this that has that longer bottom piece that they can't just flip over their head. Because that's going to stick with me the rest of my life. Or the, I know that. Any questions about harnesses? You guys have a favorite you're using already? So leash reactivity, this is a really handy video. This is Emily Marlum video working on how to do some emergency stuff like let's go, and just work with dogs who are reactive and uncomfortable on leash.
Hey YouTube! In this video we're going to go over the cue, let's go. This is not only a useful cue for shy, reactive, and overexcited dogs, but it's a great cue to teach any dog. Basically, let's go means I'm moving in the other direction and I want you to move with me. So for example, if your dog is sniffing and you want to continue on a walk, you can say let's go, or perhaps you've stopped at a street light and then the light changes, you can tell your dog let's go to tell your dog that you're moving. Or perhaps your dog is greeting another dog and you want your dog to turn away from that other dog. It's very useful for shy and reactive dogs. If they start looking like they're going to bark, you can give your dog the cue, let's go, and stop your dog from offering that unwanted behavior of acting overexcited. Okay, so this is Gremlin, and Gremlin's not learned this cue yet. Gremlin's very new to clicker training, so I'm going to go over right from the start how you would train this cue. In conjunction with teaching Let's Go, you should teach your dog to give in to leash pressure. Here is a video tutorial on how to teach this. Then, if you say Let's Go and your dog doesn't come with you, you can move your dog in an emergency situation.
And you will see the leash pressure she's talking about is very gentle.
I like to hold the leash and the clicker in my left hand when the dog is on my left side and feed with my right hand. However, if you're not experienced with this and getting the treat to your dog only behind your heel and far back on your left side, your dog could start to creep in front of you and you get a dog that's anticipating you feeding them and walking in front of you like this, blocking your foot movement. So if you find that happening, you can try holding the leash in your right hand and feeding the dog with the treat in your left hand. Good job. Step 1. Click your dog for moving with you. The first step to teaching Let's Go is encouraging your dog to walk with you on a loose leash. You can either do that by walking forwards, hi, come on, Puppets, and encouraging your dog with your voice or patting your leg, or you can walk backwards and click your dog for following you on a loose leash. If you notice that your dog is just looking at the treats and following you, you can hide the treats behind your back and encourage your dog with your voice and your body movement. Come on, Grandma. Yeah, awesome. Step 2, add turns. Now, while your dog's moving with you, you can start to turn and encourage your dog to move in the opposite direction with your voice. You can pat your leg. Good job. Hi. Good job. Step 3, adding the cue. If your dog is moving with you, you can move on to the next step. But if your dog's not moving with you, I would suggest working on encouraging your dog to move with you first. Now the next step is adding your cue. Come on, grab it. So you say your cue, let's go, change directions, and click your dog to coming in the direction that you've changed. Let's go. If your dog is lagging when you make the turn, you can throw the treat forwards. So, let's go. And then throw the treat in front of you. If your dog is racing around the corner and going ahead of you, you can put the treat down on the ground after you click so you can get a couple of steps before your dog catches up to you. Ready? Let's go. Good job. Awesome. Once you've done this for a couple of training sessions, you can start to proof your cue, let's go, by adding distractions. Are you ready? Step 4, proofing with distractions. I'm going to put some treats down on this rock as a distraction and hold my dog back so that she can't get them while I'm putting them down. Then I'm going to use my cue, let's go. Good job. If your dog doesn't turn with you, you can just try from further away. Let's go. Awesome. Good girl. Let's go. Great. Good job. Awesome job. For shy and reactive dogs, you want to proof the cue, let's go, using distractions that your dog loves, like food and toys, so your dog has a positive association with the cue. You also want to practice your cue, let's go, when there's nothing scary or intimidating in the environment. Otherwise, if you're only saying it when there's something creepy, your dog can learn that when you say let's go, it means that there's something creepy.
That's really important. The Let's Go is one of my favorites. It's actually one that I didn't really realize I was using until I watched this a bunch of years ago. Because for myself, I'm inclined to be, okay, there's danger. Okay, let's go. And you don't even really realize you're doing it. But if you do this, like she just said, that part's so important. You want to build this and teach this in a low stimulating environment so that when you need it, when there is something crazy going on, it's there. A lot of people, we just go too far too fast. And we expect it to work in the moment and we haven't proofed it yet. You proof to distance, duration, distraction. Those are 3Ds. You make sure those are solid before you expect stuff to work. We would never take a child to Disneyland to teach them the alphabet, right? So we can't take a dog to a busy street and expect it to work.
For shy, reactive, or aggressive dogs, you can use your cue, let's go, before your dog starts lunging and barking to prevent the behavior from happening, and you can give your dog a treat for turning with you. However, if your dog has already started lunging and barking, you can use the cue, let's go, but do not give your dog a treat, as you could reinforce the lunging and barking as well. Instead, give your dog a treat the next time he turns with you without barking, but make it easier for him to be able to succeed. The goal in training is to prevent your dog from barking and lunging. If your dog doesn't listen to you when you say let's go, you can use the techniques described in the video, giving into leash pressure, to move your dog away from the trigger. Here are links to 4 video tutorials on how to solve barking and reactivity.
So remember, you cannot reinforce fear, but you can reinforce the behavior. So if your dog is barking at something and you're throwing treats at him, you're not making the fear worse, but you are going to make the barking worse. So fear is involuntary, it is an emotion, it's reflexive, you cannot reinforce fear. So the myth of, if your dog is scared of thunder, if you pet him, you're going to make it worse. Absolutely not. Anybody heard of that? Yeah, right? Like, no, if you just think about it, if Maggie, you're afraid of thunder, and I came over and just patted you on the shoulder and said, you're okay. Are you going to feel better about me and the thunder, or are you going to feel worse? Right? You're going to feel better about that. If I came over and smacked you and told you to deal with it, like, not only do I hate her, but I'm also really afraid of thunder. I won't do that. That's good. Yeah. So, has anybody heard of Leslie McDevitt and Control Unleashed? This is pretty cool stuff. This is pretty new to me too. She just kind of came out with this recently. And it's something I've started incorporating into my reactivity classes. There's 2 videos I found, both by Control Unleashed students, I believe. Your next paper should be on how this works. So I've included a printout. I find after I've watched the video and I get to kind of read the steps, it makes some sense. So when I first heard about this, I thought, well, okay, that's weird. Like, I have to count to the dot. Like, I don't get it. You'll see in the video how this is so powerful. So what these pattern games are intended to do is build a consistent pattern, expectations for when you're out on a leash. So a lot of reactive dogs, especially if they're a leash reactive, and I keep going back to that one because it's so common, is that they associate the leash and the walk with stress. They get out there and they immediately start scanning, looking for something to freak out at. So if we set the walks up to be predictive of something else, something a little more fun, it changes the association to the walk. I have tweaked this a little bit myself, and I have added some stuff at the end of the 1, 2, 3. And I'll get into that after I go over this, but the videos will kind of break down what this looks like.
So today we're going to work on the 1, 2, 3 pattern game. This game is pretty easy for a dog to understand because they don't need to have any prior knowledge of any behavior whatsoever. So you're going to start off by just teaching your dog that every time you say 1, 2, 3, a treat is going to appear. So you can do this by putting a treat in front of their face. 1, 2, 3. Good girl. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
And if you glance at your paper, we have other ways to teach it where you start with 3. Give the treat. Say 2, 3. Give the treat. Say 1, 2, 3. Then give the treat. So it just depends on your dog. But this lady in particular is just going 1, 2, 3, just in case there's confusion.
1, 2, 3. Doesn't matter what she's doing. 1, 2, 3. Good girl. Anytime she hears 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good girl. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good girl. So we're going to work this into some walking. Okay? So the 1, 2, 3 pattern game is really good to help get your dog from point A to point B safely. So if they have to walk through kind of a crowded parking lot and they're a little bit nervous, 2, 3, treat. 1, 2, 3, treat. It's a short period of time. Okay, so it's going to look a lot like this. Good girl. Good girl. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good girl. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good girl. 1, 2, 3. If you want to increase your time, you can do more steps. 1, 2, 3. Good girl. Good. 1, 2, 3. Yay, good job. Good girl. Good. And we can even use it for dogs to tell us when they are ready to move forward. So we're going to play 1, 2, 3, and instead of me handing a treat to her, I'm going to put it on the floor next to my foot. If she looks back up at me, we're going to fall right back into the pattern again.
So the reason we're doing this is to help the dog tell us when they're ready. So especially fearful dogs. So you'll see the video there. She says 1, 2, 3, and drops it on the floor. Dog eats it, but until the dog looks up to her to say, I'm okay, then she'll move forward. But she doesn't move until that dog's ready to go. This is that consent thing too, about your dog telling you, okay, I feel safe enough to check in with you to move ahead. It's something we do as dog owners is we're always going. Go, 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 forward, forward, forward. We don't stop to smell the roses and check the female like we need to do more often. But you'll see her do that here.
That tells me that she's ready to move forward. If she doesn't look at me, we aren't going to go forward. So here we go. 1, 2, 3. Yes. 1, 2, 3. Yes. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Good girl. 1, 2, 3. Good. 1, 2, 3. Yes. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Good girl. Good. So all this is a very predictable pattern for your dog. So Gracie's obviously off leash because we're inside. If you're working with this and your dog is on leash and they're sniffing or they're looking at something else, please resist the urge to call their name or pat your leg or do any of those things. We want them to recognize the pattern. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Good girl. We want them to recognize when they hear 3, yes, that they're going to get a treat. So regardless of what they're doing, that food is coming. If your dog cannot look at you or doesn't reorient back to you when they hear 3, take a step back, go back and establish the pattern a little bit better, and then try again. Remember, dog training is not a race, right? So you can use this while walking, regular leash walks, getting them out to the vet's office, getting them through a crowded parking lot, getting them to training class. So if you're taking a training class with me, try using it to get from your car into the facility and see how that goes for you. If you have questions while you're working with the 1, 2, 3 pattern game, please, please, please let me know. But just remember, it is always 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So even though she's licking my hand, I'm still going to give it to her. Right? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Hey, it's a good girl. So it's just counting 1, 2, 3, treat, and then we're going to start using that for things like leash walking and moving across the room. So, get to work. Let me know how it goes. And if you have questions, please ask. Thank you so much, guys.
Cool, right? Who has questions? Anybody?
I use this with all my puppies, so
Awesome.
it's fantastic. What would you say is the best way? You've got just teaching the 3, and then of course the 1, 2, 3, and I have been doing it 1, 2, 3,
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, rather than 3,
Yep.
and then,
And that's what I've been teaching it too.
okay.
I think so as a learner, whether you're human or animal, we all have our own ways of picking stuff up. So I think so far, so I've run 3 reactivity classes so far doing it this way. And so far, I haven't had any of my students, dogs or human, struggle with just 1, 2, 3. But I think if I did ever see someone kind of struggling with it, or the dog was struggling with it, I'd go and switch it for them to 3, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
One dog I think in particular that I've done training with was definitely, it had to be very quick and abrupt because the dog didn't have focus to like maintain to the 1, 2, 3.
So your rate of reinforcement had to
So
be
it was
fast.
very quick reinforcements. That's where I think like going to the 3, 3, 2, 1, so like building on that,
Yeah.
that pattern would definitely be useful.
And good for you. That's something where if you know your dog and you're paying attention, you know to alter just the way that you're presenting the information. Just like we do with children in a classroom, right? We just tweak it a little bit to help them learn. So yeah, great question though. But so far, I'm just been doing 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
But that one I did pull that one right off of the website and thought, oh, that's an interesting way to do that as well. If the dog's struggling, is start with 3. Yep. Any other questions about this one? Does this baffle anybody? And if it does, it's okay. This is brand new stuff. I can go over it some more, but there is one more video. And this one, she's outside. On a leash.
And you can follow along. 1, 2, 3.
So this dog is visibly a little nervous. So for her to look at her handler is huge. There. That was a perfect example of I'm not ready yet. Okay, now I'm ready.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
That one just kind of shows what it looks like on a leash. But cool stuff once you kind of get the hang of it. These little exercises can be kind of confusing at first, and you got to get your rhythm right. But don't worry, it comes, especially if you set yourself and your dog up for success and you start, again, not at Disneyland, start in your kitchen. All this stuff, just take your time. Training is not linear, it is not a one-way street. You're gonna start here and you're gonna do a whole bunch of this, and that's okay. So that's all for the presentation. So I talked fast enough that we do have time for you guys to share, your experiences with your foster homes, your own dogs, ask Q&A, ask any questions that you might have, I'll answer for you today.
So how do I fix the fence thing?
So describe the
Okay,
situation.
so I'm surrounded on all sides by dogs.
Okay.
And,
How fenced do you?
like when they can only see through the little cracks in it. I have a 4-pound Yorkie who he's the top of the ladder,
Yeah.
but he's 4 pounds, so he's a little easier to handle than something 70 pounds.
Yeah.
Fluoxetine is not working.
No.
We're actually removing him from it.
How long have you been on the flux team?
5 months. He's having urinary issues because of it, so we're taking him off. So we need to find something else to put him on. So same thing of those dogs, he attacks through the fence, but as soon as he sees it, he's like, I'm just gonna go.
Yeah, yeah.
But, so if they bark, I do, okay, time out in the house. So I just remove him from the situation, I tell him, but I make him do it on his own, I don't go and get him. And then he just goes in the house for a timeout, and then I let him back out, if he barks, he comes back in.
So the first thing we need to do, number 1 is we check for medical conditions, and you're already on that. Number 2 is antecedent arrangement. Which means we manage the environment to set the dog up for success. So if you have a dog who has been practicing this fence fighting for, even it's been 2 days,
Yeah.
sometimes it's all it takes. We can't allow the dog to have access to that thing, that stimulus, because it's just gonna keep practicing and practicing and practicing, and you're just building a behavior you don't want. So you go out with your dog on leash, and you hang out sort of in the, I'm just gonna pretend I know what your yard looks like, sort of a square. You're gonna go out into the middle of your yard. Maybe, again, just setting up a pretend scenario, maybe you have your neighbor's dogs on this side are currently out. So you're either gonna go to the middle of your yard or maybe over here on leash, and you're going to practice an engage and disengage exercise. And I can send you that to the email as well. So engage, disengage is a protocol to help desensitize an animal to its triggers and then just recondition how to respond. So you would hang out on leash in the middle of your yard. When your dog glances at the fence but doesn't react, that's where you would click or say yes and give them a treat.
Okay.
But the leash part is to keep him from practicing running to the fence. Because as soon as he gets out the door, he's probably bolting to the fence.
Yeah, he does like a whole little bulldog stance, like he actually gets like this,
Yeah.
it's hilarious.
It's a
And he-
posturing thing.
He
Like, I'm coming.
bounces,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, so if he's on leash with you, so that you can control that whole world and prevent that behavior from happening, that's step one.
okay,
So you're gonna go out on leash with a bag full of something amazing, something he loves, and you're just gonna practice him looking at the fence without reacting and giving him a treat. Every time he looks at it, you either click or you say yes, whatever's most comfortable for you. Have you used a clicker before?
I use yes instead, because
Perfect.
half the time I lose my clicker.
Yeah, that's totally fair. A lot of people don't like it,
Yeah.
attached to them either. So as soon as he glances and doesn't bark, you say yes and treat. And you practice that, 20, 30 times.
Okay.
Um,
We did that with the foster dogs in the house,
Perfect.
because he's our resident, so now he knows if he gets scared, he'll actually turn around and run and jump on the couch now, and that's his safe spot.
Okay.
When before, he'd be like,
Push. Yeah, good. Perfect. So you kind
so
of
just do the same thing but outside, I never
Yeah.
thought to do that
So the
outside.
disengage part of it, the second step, would be when he looks at it, nothing happens and you just wait and be quiet. And then he'll look away from the fence and at you. That's where you mark and reinforce.
Okay.
That's where you say yes. Because we want him to look at his trigger, go, okay, I see it, I hear it, I need a minute, I'm gonna process it, I'm gonna smell the roses, I'm gonna check it out. Turns out it's not as big of a deal as I thought. I'm just gonna check in with mom now. That's where you would mark and treat.
Okay.
That's the engage, disengage. But the actual engagement, it's actually considered lat, look at that, is look at it without freaking out, and I will heavily reinforce that. So that's the important part, is antecedent arrangement, so control your environment first, and then build the skill you want. So over time, engage, disengage, over time, you will just get yourself closer and closer to the fence on leash, so you have that control over the environment, where you can get to the fence and you're standing right next to it, and he's looking at it and looking away from it.
Okay,
Then you can start letting him off leash.
okay.
So the annoying part of this is he can't have free access to your yard wall. I know, that's the crappy part.
I have a
totally get it.
gajillion fences,
Yeah.
like those little portable ones, so
There you
yeah,
go.
I can do it.
Yeah, and luckily, because he's little, you can.
Yeah.
I do have some people with bigger dogs, especially with bigger dogs, is I've had them build most of these guys luckily only have one side that's a problem. So I have them building like an interior fence inside of the fence, like with snow fence or even an X-Pen or whatever. And basically, so here's your wood fence, and I have them set up a fence like about here. So then they can practice here. And as the dog gets better and better, we start moving the temporary fence closer to the wooden one until it goes away.
Okay,
But that's the antecedent arrangement part. That's the part that always has to be looked at first. Is my environment set up for success? And if he's running out the door and bolting to the fences,
yeah,
your environment is not.
okay.
So-
Yeah, that video was exactly like my backyard, and then you lift them up so you can see the other dog.
Yeah.
moving.
I'm
So,
out.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense? Okay, cool. Anybody else? Everybody's cool? You guys wanna add anything?
Yeah, I'll ask a question, just because we have a few dogs now that are, they're guarders, and they're guarding their person and their
Yeah.
places and their spaces. And, in particular, Jason,
Yeah,
and,
me and his, yeah, it
Okay.
didn't work out, he didn't end up staying on the weekend,
Okay,
but yeah, we think he was protecting him.
okay.
Cause one second he's taking cheese out of my hand, and the next second he's like on top of me.
Trying to eat you.
Well, I don't know if he was actually trying, he had a muzzle, but I was like, and then he'd immediately go over to foster dad and nuzzle in and like, just lots of loving, and then he'd stare.
Yeah, okay. Okay. So what's his story?
I'll let you.
Do you have a background? For, like, how long has he been with you? How big is he? What's his breed? What's his story?
So he's a shepherd mix, and he was a Alberta, was he an ACC transfer?
I think it was from the ASPCA,
ASPCA transfer. So we don't know a lot about his history.
but it's usually not good when it comes from the ASPCA.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
Yeah,
For sure.
he's been through some things evidently, and
How old is he?
he's an adult, so maybe about, they estimate 2 or 3?
Is it
2 or 3?
Jason? Are we talking about Jason?
Jason, yeah.
I heard he's Pyrenees cross.
It's like a shepherd Pyrenees, perhaps. He's a big,
Big fluffy
fluffy, big fluffy bag. And
But he's an adult.
he's an adult. Yeah, and that's all I know about his history. He's only been with us for under a year, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any improvement in any area over the past year?
Since he's been with Jason, he's seen some improvements.
Yeah, which is kind of weird because when we first met, he was only supposed to stay with us over the weekend.
It always.
A staycation, right? And so when we first met him, did not growl, did not bark, did not lounge at us at all. He just went right to us, to me and my partner. And then whenever we tried to have staycation for him, for us to go somewhere, that's what happens. He'll just growl, lounge at that person, and then just try to lean on me, push himself towards me.
Okay.
So yeah.
So the whole leaning thing, again, contextual, sometimes it can be a bit of a guarding behavior, like this is mine. But a lot of times it's that need for, please help me. I'm in desperate need of you to touch me, to tell me it's okay. Either way, indicative of quite a lack of confidence. He would be a very confident dog, that's for sure. Okay. So he's more guardy of you, but no items or anything? Like, does he
No.
protect beds and
No.
kind of hover over things?
No.
No, just you guys? Okay, so when it comes to people, so I've had resource guarders. Barrett, when he started, when he was in pain, he started guarding me too. I couldn't get in my front door without him attacking my 4 other dogs. So the thing with people, this is the toughest, because with items, we can just take the thing away and work on it. But with people, it's kind of hard to just remove yourself all the time, because you sort of have to live in your house. So the thing about dogs who guard people, especially, I just did a seminar actually with Michael Shikashio on this like 3 days ago. One of the biggest skills we can teach, like in terms of training, is teaching him to remove himself from your space. So it's a stationing skill, essentially, where we teach them to, I'll give you an example to kind of make sense of this. My dog, when I would walk in the front door, if he couldn't get to me first, he would attack all my other dogs. So I taught him, under low stem, how to go to your spot. So I would do the little finger flick and I'd say, Barrett, go to your spot. And it didn't matter if it was his bed or we have a bench seat by the window, go to your spot, go to your, whatever it was that he could put his bum, go to your spot. I do it, behind baby gates, go to your spot. And then reinforce him, of course, for going. So what I did is I transferred that into when I was coming home. I waited for my husband to be home to kind of help me on the inside to make sure this was strong, because sometimes you need a couple people to help you. I would walk in the front door, and as soon as I'd make eye contact with Barrett, I'd say, go to your spot, and I'd do this, and I had a bed, a coranda bed, a raised bed, set up kind of in the corner of my kitchen, where he would go to and sit. I could greet my other dogs, they would go away, then I'd go say hello to Barrett. It's the space thing. It's this bubble is such a big deal. So in terms of training something to help you with that, the stationing cue to go to your spot, so he will remove himself, so because he can't guard you if he's not next to you, right? The other half of that though, and this is where you dive deep down the rabbit hole of behavior, is understanding attachment theory. And that we don't have a secure attachment. Your dog doesn't have a secure attachment to you. It's an insecure attachment where he feels he has to guard you with his life because he doesn't want you to go away because he doesn't feel secure and stable enough to kind of let you do your own thing. He's got to be there, make sure you're okay, right? So dive into, and that's a whole other seminar on attachment theory, but if you're Googling attachment theory, replace the word child, because those are the most common, replace the word child with dog, and you'd be fascinated with what you learn about attachment. Actually, you and I have gone over this before with attachment theories, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So does that make sense with teaching station cue to go to your spot? Is something you can do?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some videos I can find for you if you need some help, but the most important part was when a dog guards a person is to teach the dog to move away without, being upset with them, of course, to get out of here, because we don't want that, that's gonna make it worse, and we all know this, but, so just teach a stationing, set up, if there's certain times, for me, it was pretty easy to identify, because it was more when I entered a room that really caused problems for Barrett, so you're gonna have to identify the specific environments that are the hardest for him, or is it just all the time? Like, can you tell me when he's guarding you or exhibiting those behaviors most often?
It's just when we were gonna drop him off to the other foster. Yeah, introducing other people to him.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that'll be something then to do intros is, yeah, well, same idea. We're gonna have to, it's gonna be a little tricky, sort of, we can't just walk into people's houses. So we're gonna have to set something up with, say, meeting them out on the lawn and bringing a towel that you've taught him to sit on, and bring that with you everywhere, and throw it on the lawn. And when you go to meet someone, ask them to go to a spot, and then walk away a little bit, and then say hello. Does that make sense? It's about creating that bubble so he can't get all insecure and try to guard. So it is hard. It's hard for dogs who are not confident to remove themselves from the person that they need the most. And I get that, but I can tell you even from my own experience with a garter, it worked so great because Barrett wasn't being ignored. He just knew that if he went over there, because he didn't want to fight, they don't want to fight. He knew that if he just went and sat on his bed and he waited just a couple minutes, I could say hello to these guys, and then I'd make my way over to him, and then everything was okay. So that makes sense. You guys are familiar with the stationing? Do you want videos or anything on that?
That would be great, actually, yeah. I think I'll circulate as much as I possibly can to those who couldn't come here, because there's a few with garters and particularly
Are you familiar with Michael Shikashio at all? So he's got some really great stuff on stationing. But